on our Quarter 1 FY22 earnings call to discuss the operating and financial performance for the quarter. I trust that you and your families are safe. On this quarter, we have reported a resilient performance during this quarter despite a challenging macroeconomic and environment due to pandemic-induced lockdowns and restrictions. While we saw broader operating constraints during the period, our client engagement and wins across the FMCG space remained stable. On the international business front, we are happy to share that CFF and Nova both delivered a healthy performance on back of improving demand and volume offtake in the European markets. On a consolidated basis, our revenue from operations stood at 354.9 crores. The performance includes consolidation of CFF and Nova in Quarter 1 and not comparable year-on-year. On a year-on-year comparable basis, revenues grew by 44.4%. This was on account of lower base in the corresponding quarter last year. During the quarter, we continued to witness cost pressures on account of inflation in raw materials and especially costs in logistics and supply chain. Accordingly, we have undertaken suitable price hikes. This, in combination with our prudent inventory management practices, enabled us to report stable gross margins of 42.2%. On the EBITDA front, lower revenues moderated EBITDA performance. In addition, our other expenses during the quarter were higher as it included one-time preponement of R&D CWIP amounting to 12.9 crores on account of accounting policy change. This change was mandated due to more and more exchange of IP usage between India and Italy operations. Without this adjustment, EBITDA margin stood at 16.1% and PAT stood at 27 crores. On the tax front, I am happy to share that we have a favorable update on the tax appeal in the matter of our wholly owned subsidiary Keva Fragrances. Recently, the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal, ITAT, as per its recent order, has set aside the order of the Commissioner of Income Tax and has directed the assessing officer to allow amortization of goodwill as an eligible expenditure. The tribunal has also squashed the department's appeal on the other two issues favoring by the CIT earlier. Consequently, we have reversed the additional tax provision aggregating to rupees 64.5 crores for the period between FY17 to FY21. So our reported PAT this quarter has come in at 81.4 crores. Excluding this one-time reversal and effect of expense proponent, the adjusted PAT stood at 16.9 crores. From a consolidated balance sheet perspective, our net debt position was comfortable at rupees 386 crores, with a net debt to equity at 0.4x. The payment for acquisition of Nova in April 2021 of approximately 25 crores led to a slight increase in debt of rupees 6 crores as compared to March 31st position. As communicated earlier, in FY22 we have no major capex plans on hand and the focus remains on generating healthy free cash flows, which will enable us to further strengthen our balance sheet position. Coming to some key business updates, as you all know, the unprecedented rains in Maharashtra in July caused severe flooding in certain areas. Unfortunately, our unit in Mahad was severely affected due to these incessant rains and floods. It resulted in flooding in our plant and major outage in our facility and region. As per our assessment, the factory operations at Mahad are likely to remain suspended till end September. However, we are undertaking all necessary steps to resume operations at the earliest, and also have recently completed the survey with the insurance team. The overall insurance cover being sufficient, we would have no long-term effects to our financials. We are implementing our business continuity plans and planned additional volumes in the China plant. As a responsible corporate citizen, our company has also allocated rupees 75 lakhs from its CSR budget to local NGOs and government organizations for carrying out flood relief work in the affected region of Mahad. Health and safety of our employees and communities is a key focus area for us. As part of our employee welfare initiative, we partnered with Apollo Hospital and other local hospitals for vaccination drives for protection against COVID-19 for our employees and employees' families. I am pleased to share that over 87% of employees have received the first dose and around 22% of the employee base is fully inoculated. In addition, we have extended the vaccination drives for families and secondary manpower in the region. I would now like to cover some developments on the management team side. Mr. Shrikant Mate, SHK Executive Vice President and Group CFO, will be superannuating on September 30, 2021. Shrikant has been with us for over a decade and held various leadership roles at SHK. He was also actively involved in driving our company's IPO and acquisitions and has been an integral contributor to the growth of SHK. On behalf of the Keba family, I would like to thank Shrikant for his contributions and wish him best in his retirement. We have recently appointed Mr. Rohit Saraogi as Executive Vice President and Group CFO designate the company. Rohit is a chartered accountant and brings with him around 2 decades of finance domain and leadership experience. In the past, he has been associated with large and reputed companies in the FMCG space. We would like to welcome him on board. In the next couple of months, Rohit will work closely with Shrikant to ensure a smooth transition and will formally take charge as Group CFO with effect from 15th November 2021. To conclude, as we look ahead from the demand standpoint, we are currently witnessing steady wins and inquiries across customers in domestic and international markets. While there are concerns with regard to the macro environment, given the uncertainties relating to the pandemic, internally we have several promising growth initiatives in place. We are confident that our strategic growth levers, along with our robust business model, should enable us to report healthy performance going forward. On that note, I would request the moderator to open the forum for any questions or suggestions that you may have.
Thank you very much. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on their touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. Participants, you may press star and 1 to ask a question. The first question is from the line of Payal Lad from Progressive Share Brokers. Please go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, sir. I hope everything is safe at your end. Then I have just a couple of questions that need few clarification. Firstly, I would want to know how do you see the traction in the Ayush space of late and going forward? And secondly, in terms of what kind of opportunities or market size do you foresee in the savory market? Like some kind of capex which you are looking at. And one last question in terms of the company having witnessed Amazon Flipkart orders in the natural flavor segment. So like these were on more on which side? Was it on the confectionery or the beverages side? And how big are these orders if you could quantify on the same? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think the overall macroeconomic situation is quite okay. Particularly on the flavors you have asked on the savory, we continue to invest in our developments on the savory market. It's a very large market, as you can imagine, in India, but we are focused on very small part of that, which are the top-note niches. We have internal capexes to continue to grow this market without too much new capacity or new investment. On the Ayush front as well, we are seeing continuous robust growth, and it's a small segment for us. The Ayurvedic extract and active business will see good traction in the coming years. as this has become a very big area of focus for the consumer trend. So both of these areas of savory flavor as well as natural extracts are areas where we are continuing to do our developments and we continue to grow, but they will remain small segments for the few years to come.
Okay. And sir, you mentioned about internal capex in the savory segment. So, like, if you could quantify what range would be?
So the capexes for these activities would be in the 2-3 crores range. So they are not significant. We already have the large building and capexes for all the utilities, land building in place. The extra capacity would be more in terms of bigger sizing of equipment and would not be in the magnitude more than 2-3 crores.
Okay, and with regards to the Amazon orders, like there is a mention in the AR that you are witnessing monthly orders in this space, in the flavor segment. So, like, how good is that number?
So again, flavors is seeing robust growth in the organic business. We have had another year this year when we lost the sort of summer season in India because of the pandemic. A lot of the ice cream and beverage flavor sales was deferred, particularly in the month of May and June. So all of these sales are very seasonal with the very big peaks in the summer season. So we don't anticipate that the rest of the year will catch up the sale for what is lost. However, our track for the remaining 3 quarters remains intact. Export growth continues to be robust. So I don't foresee any big change in the flavor market. We continue to grow and we should do 15% plus growth year on year.
Okay. And if I can just squeeze in one more question, if you may allow. With regards to the provision reversion which has happened in this quarter, pertaining to 64 crores in terms of unamortized goodwill part. What exactly is that issue? Like, was it disallowed earlier and then how did it take place?
So the tax provision, it was taken in the past and the tax ruling has come in the favor of the company. So we have now reversed that provision.
Okay. I'll get back into it for further questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. The next question is from the line of Bharat Sheth from Quest Investment. Please go ahead.
Hi, Kedar. Thanks for the opportunity.
Hi.
Kedar, on a flavor business, you have given a YOY growth of 15%. So, which is a little ahead. I mean, what earlier we were looking is 10 to 12%. That is great. And how do we see the profitability in once growth really starts kicking in? So what are the operating leverage do we have in the flavor business?
So I think flavor business we have always maintained 15% plus growth. There is good profitability margin around 46-47% and that flowing down to a profitability of 10% plus in the PAT line. It's a steady state business continuing to grow. There is no surprises on the flavor side at all. The environment remains normal, demand is robust, then we would continue to grow that business very aggressively. Having said that, on the overall fragrance business as well, we have good number of wins, good number of FMCG companies have approved our products, and so the overall growth in the long term or near term remains very much intact. For the overall margin, so this quarter we have clocked around 16% EBITDA, and in a normal quarter we should be in upwards of 18 to 19% EBITDA level.
Okay. So whatever business that we lost in Q1, because Q1 number include also last previous year CFF number, and so this growth, top line growth is not really reflected. So if one has to look at, normalize growth.
We have so we have 44% growth year on year versus last year, which is the underlying like for like business.
Okay.
I think we have probably 25-30 crore business momentum loss in the first quarter owing to the pandemic, but we foresee that this will restore sometime in this quarter or next quarter.
Okay. So overall growth of around 15% for fragrance business on normalized basis, is that possible, or plus little higher growth?
Yes.
Because the kind of win now we are.
Last year like for like 15%. We are still confident to achieve.
Okay. And coming to now this write-off, see in last 4 years on R&D expenses we have capitalized almost 200 crore, and in last 2 years we have written off 36, and now in this quarter 12 crore. So how much this kind of one-off will really continue, rather where despite there is a normal depreciation of intangible that we provide. If you can give
This
one-off become a
36 crore is for the. Let me talk. 36 crore is not related to R&D at all. It is on accounting impairment of the plant in the Netherlands. It is part of the plant shifting to Mahad.
Apart from that 36 crore, that is a different thing. In 20 and 21,
no change.
Annual report we R&D expenses written off apart from depreciation is 36 crore.
So there is, I understand. What I'm trying to say is that these R&D expenses written off is it's basically you have the expenses which are running a project for 1 year or more with the clients, and then the expenses to that in normal situation, about 20% of the projects we will win. 80% of the projects we are not winning. This is just a normal part of the business. The reason for doing the amortization is the large projects are running over 2-3 years, and this policy was in place. Unfortunately, because of the last 2 years of this pandemic and then uncertainty, the wins, while we have won the business launches have not happened in the same manner that was normal case before. Plus, we have now our IP and formulations being used in Italy, and it is getting so that is why we have changed the policy to expense out the entire R&D. And this 12.9 crore is not actually a write-off for a new cost. It is just expense preponement.
Okay. So do we expect to continue same amount kind of a thing in remaining?
No, so we have changed the policy. That we will expense the R&D expense instead of capitalizing it.
Okay.
So going forward, you will not see any capitalization and write-off. It will directly be expensed in the quarter.
So in that becomes then the normal EBITDA will be much lower than what we are guiding, or the EBITDA margin that we are guiding.
No, there is no impact. No, there is no impact on the EBITDA because it was already a steady state. We had write-offs and we had expense deferment in almost the same quantum. So there was no real change in the quarter-on-quarter expense. By changing to the new policy, it will just be straight expense. There will be no change or effect on the overall EBITDA percentage.
So my question is now this 13 crore what we have written off in Q1. So same amount will continue for remaining 3 quarters and in future also?
So we are not capitalizing anymore the R&D, we are expensing it. So every quarter we will expense the quantum that is spent in that quarter, and that will have no effect on the EBITDA, because in reality we have some write-off from the previous CWIP, and we have some expenses getting kept in CWIP. So that is a steady state. There will be no difference on account of the change in policy.
Okay. So, and can you, give more color on the new win and how do we expect to ramp up? And second, on the Biosonic opportunity. And third, this new win, whether any multinational FMCG is there or not?
So new win, as of now, we don't have any multinational MNC, I would say, as of now. We are negotiating as always, and hopefully we will crack something this year. The point on the new wins, I think there is a lot of new wins in the last year and even early part of this year, which are not yet launched. So we have a very robust pipeline with all the big companies within India as well as overseas. And we see this as a phase where, because of the pandemic or various reasons, the launches were delayed. But the products are approved, everything is in place, and at the time when things become more normal for the FMCG business, we see a very big growth spurt coming in.
Okay. If last question, see, QOQ also we have seen a good amount of seen in the staff cost. So is this a normalized run rate, or we have hired more people, or so how really one should look at it?
So Q&Q, the cost increase this quarter has been largely on the Italian front, with the conversion rate and the new company Nova coming into the fold. The baseline cost in India, the existing business, has not changed much. We will see the effect of salary increases, which are a normal yearly increment in the July quarter. So in the first quarter there was no increase. Second quarter onwards, in place for normal cycle, there will be a increase in employee cost, but it won't be very significant.
Okay, and how do we look at, gross margin and raw material availability as well as the pricing scenario?
So raw material availability is still a difficult scenario. We have maintained good inventory and good planning. We have also, put out price increases to the clients, and we expect that we will be able to manage our gross margins in the 42-43% range. There may be one quarter some effect of the Mahad plant closure, but eventually on a longer term we will be in the 43% gross margin range.
Okay, thank you. If I have any question, I'll join back.
Thank you very much. The next question is from the line of Sumit Nagar from Malabar Investments. Please go ahead. Sumit Nagar, may I request you to go ahead with your question, please? Sumit Nagar, may I request you to unmute your line from your side and go ahead with your question? Sumit Nagar, can you hear us? Did you know response? We move on to the next participant. The next question is from the line of Deepak Poddar from Sapphire Capital Partners. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. So I just wanted to understand, you mentioned about the raw material availability, in a difficult scenario. So how do you see that impacting your EBITDA margin going forward? Yeah.
No, so I think we have had some effect in the flavors in the last quarter and in the fragrances to some extent in this quarter on our margin. Mm-hmm. But we don't foresee any big effect on the margins or EBITDA, and we will be able to pass on some of these costs to the clients and maintain our margins in EBITDA percentage.
So this year our target has been in the range of 19 to 20% EBITDA margin. So that remain intact?
That's correct.
That's it from my side. Thank you very much. All the very best.
Thank you very much. The next question is from the line of Rohit Ovri from Progressive Shares. Please go ahead.
Hi, sir. This question is from the annual report. The annual report is saying that you're looking at an ambitious target of around $1 billion, which is from the global business by the end of decade. So this translates into around 18 to 22% growth rate. So how do you intend to achieve this? Are you looking at some more acquisitions, or are you looking at some joint ventures that might come in future?
So the overall CAGR growth we will be able to do with the organic of something 12 to 15% and the balance with an inorganic acquisition strategy.
Okay. In your opening remarks, you mentioned that there are some strategic growth initiatives that you're looking at. If you can just take us through that.
So we have certain sort of active molecules that we call health and active, Ayurvedic extract and things like this, which we evaluated last time. So these are all initiatives for the longer term. These will drive growth on a very big quantum, although it is in the nascent stage as of now.
Okay. So my last question is, the promoter group has created a pledge, and can you just take us through that, the reason for that, if you would like to share?
No, so we have created the pledge just as like a OD line for any emergencies. There are obviously family members within the promoters who are who have various stages of their life. So there are expected expenses towards buying house, towards other education and other expenses. So we are keeping this as a pledge to keep a line available for any kind of family expenses.
Okay, so by when do you think you can reverse this? Any timeline that you have in mind? Maybe a year and a half, 2 years?
No, we don't have any timeline for this reversal. Normally, we have every year sufficient dividend payouts, and that takes care of all the family expenses. This year, given the pandemic second round, and we may be in a situation with the uncertainty, it is difficult to estimate what would have been or what will be the dividend payout, and it was just an action to make sure that we have some liquidity in the family. I am also traveling. I am in the European continent at the moment. And given the pandemic and uncertainty, this was the fastest way to draw the line, and we have taken it. There are no immediate plans of reversing it anytime soon, but at the same time, the amount which is drawn against this pledge is less than 5 crores, so it's not a big amount. Only thing is we would like to keep the pledge as a emergency source of funding.
Okay, sir. I have more questions. I'll fall back in the queue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Participants, you may press star and 1 to ask a question. The next question is from the line of Nikhil from SIMPL. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Good afternoon. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are.
Yeah, hi. Kedar, just to put it correctly on the provision side, so if you look at our balance sheet, on the intangible asset under development, there was a closing balance of 13 crores. So this write-off of 12.9 crore which we have taken is we've completely removed the intangible assets from the balance sheet. Would that be the right
That's
understanding? And
That's right.
the margin
That's absolutely right.
Okay, and margin impact you are saying is not there because we were taking a write-off of 11 crores in the P&L every year, which was against these R&D projects, which now get subsumed as the R&D expenses.
That's right.
Okay.
So it was almost 12 crore of capitalization and 12 crore of expense from CWIP was the trend for the last year and a half because of the pandemic. So we decided we just go to a simple expenses model, especially since the utilization of this IP in Europe, in Italian operations also is there. It becomes difficult to quantify the revenue versus the capitalization. So we decided to abandon this capitalization and go to a 100% expense model.
Okay. So just one clarity. So these R&D projects you mentioned are projects we run with the clients, and because these either the win rate is not happening or the product does not get launched, we have to take a write-off. So is the timeline of these projects generally less than 1 year, 6 months, that kind of? And are these projects only specific to clients? Because my understanding was that we develop products which can be sold across clients. So just if you can help me understand this part.
So the CWIP policy was specific to clients and specific for new molecule IP. The specific client projects actually, last year with the pandemic, there were delays in the launch, so we had to write off quite a lot of projects. Again, this year with the pandemic situation, we decided that it's better to just move to a simple policy of expensing out. The IP, CWIP of the IP on the molecules is now started to be used also in Italy. And then the question we anticipate from the various tax authorities and how much is used in India, how much is used outside India, and so on and so forth for the amortization. So we will just expense it and make it simple from the policy point of view.
Okay. Second question is, you mentioned in the start of the call that we have started taking price increases, and I think I would congratulate you because even with the way the cost increases have been, sequentially gross margin have remained stable. The price increases we are taking, are they only covering the RM increases, or because their increase is also on the freight side and other line items? So does it increase most of the cost element or only the RM increase?
So it's not only the RM increase, but we are trying to offset as much as possible the overall cost increases, which, like you mentioned, freight, other expenses due to COVID, and internally from kind of distancing, we have some operational inefficiencies on the way we are operating because of the COVID situation. So all of that we are taking into account when we pass on the cost. I don't think that the cost will cover everything in universally, but we are at least being, because on the client side also it's a situation of uncertainty and lower growth environment or perception. So we are taking the middle path and we are trying to maximize what price increase we can do.
Okay. And last question. On the CFF, when we had acquired, what I understand that CFF had a good and very strong fine fragrance customer base. Are we able to leverage out with the sales market in Middle East or Southeast Asia or India? Are we getting any success, or if you can just help me on the business development? And secondly, there was this molecule which we had in-licensed last quarter. which we were the sole seller. So any updates on those projects? How are they improving or going about?
So I think Southeast Asia, we are working on the developments. There are good connections with the clients. But at the moment, Southeast Asia is also in the epicenter of the pandemic. There is, more and more difficult situation, particularly in Indonesia and some other countries. So we have seen that it's not anywhere near normal at the moment. So there the projects in terms of approved products and so on and so forth are not getting launched. We will wait till the things normalize. So I think in the regions we are operating, Southeast Asia at the moment is the region which is most affected by the pandemic, whereas the Middle East, India and European regions have now come out or are towards the outlook is improving. Southeast Asia, the outlook is still in the negative phase of the pandemic. And we continue to work. We have our center and there is good interaction with the clients. But the overall expectation for us for the product launches particularly, it's not going to happen at least in the coming quarter.
Okay, fine. I'll come back in the queue. Thanks.
Thank you. Participants, you may press star and 1 to ask a question. Ladies and gentlemen, you may press star and 1 to ask a question. The next question is from the line of Deep Paul, an individual investor. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi Kedar. Thanks for the opportunity. As we know that last quarter it was challenging on the collection front, so the receivables days has deteriorated. But even if we look from the last decade, it has inched up from 70, 80 days till now hovering around 100. So if you can give a color or clarity how we can see the receivable days over in the near future, because for most of the other FMCG suppliers it's around 60 days. So is it too aspirational to think that we can move to that direction?
No, I think if you look at the domestic versus export, it is actually domestic very close to the 60 days mark. When we go to the export, we have about 120 days of normal, many clients in the 120-day payment cycles. So collections of 100 is actually a blended average between domestic and export. So when we look at it and you see the kind of average going up, it's not that the collections intensity has been lesser than what it was in the past. It is actually more reflection that more amount of our sales is in exports.
Okay. So, can't we reduce the receivable days for the exports, or it's the industry trend?
Actually, particularly in the Middle East and other countries where there is competition from the European suppliers, they are quite okay to give long payment terms because there is almost zero interest rates in their countries. With that competition, we are needing to have a higher payment cycle than what is in the domestic market.
Okay, thanks. And my next question is regarding the inventory turnover. So our inventory is quite large, so around 45% of sales, or currently we are holding 500 CR. So are there any opportunity, or are we having any strategy in plan to reduce the intensity of the by prudent? We know that we have prudent inventory management. Still, if we can rope in top consulting firms and leverage the latest trends which are happening over last decade, like data science or artificial intelligence, to bring in more efficiency into the inventory management. So are there any thoughts around this or any plans currently in pipeline?
So we have a team of analytical and, like you say, artificial intelligence working on this problem at the moment. And I think the combination of growing the sales with the same level of inventory and reducing the inventory, both these measures we are taking. It's clearly an area of improvement that we will plan out. But I don't see, given our business model with the large number of SKUs and small customers and variation in the raw material availability and pricing, I don't foresee a big change, kind of a big step change. But incrementally, 2, 3, 4% we will drive every year.
Okay, that's good. So, and my last question is regarding the CFF acquisition. So it has been done in Italy, where it's an aging population and the inherent growth is around 1 to 2%. Then how come CFF is growing, which you have alluded around 10%? So is it because of some great products or from new launches? And how sustainable is the growth rate? Or we will be having a unit with low growth in near future as this current growth subsides?
No, so I think when you look at the economy growth versus consumer behavior, well, the overall economic growth seems to be smaller digit, 1-2%. The consumer spending per capita in fragrance and FMCG is quite high in these markets compared to market like India. And normally what happens is that the GDP is only looking at the total number, and when you look at the premium product versus what they call niche products, there are many products which are big brands, and then there are many smaller brands. So in a low growth and in a more difficult economic growth situation, actually the smaller brands are growing faster than the big global brands. So we are seeing that, and that's why the growth is higher in this company.
Okay. So did we get any opportunity to cross-sell the CFF product portfolio into the Indian market to different clients, which has helped us in wins? Has that happened, or
No, it is happening. I think the current scenario, it is difficult to interact. There is not much travel happening, so not much integration. We are letting the teams work on their own market and clients. Many of the labs, both in Italy earlier and in India, we had to work with 25% or 50% people in the labs. So we have not really started this cross-selling opportunities at this moment. But the product range, we have obviously ability to look at it and start the cross-selling once things are more normal.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kedar, and wish you all the best for the near future.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Rohan Gupta from Edelweiss. Please go ahead.
Hi, sir. Good afternoon. So a couple of questions from my side. So one is the clarification which you mentioned on EBITDA margin. Despite a very muted margin in the current quarter on a company level, almost a 12%, you still guided for 18 to 19% margin for full year. Just wanted to understand if the rest of the quarter you are expecting the margin expansion, or the for full year margin of 18 to 19% that will also compensate for the loss of the current quarter.
We expect that the future quarters should compensate to the extent of this quarter. Without the one-off adjustment, we are at 16% EBITDA margin, and we will definitely be in a full year basis closer to the 19-20%.
Okay, so again, this 16% margin will be compensated. So for full year, we are still confident about 19 to 20% margin.
That's right.
Okay, that's helpful. So second question is on this.
Growth levers are in place. We hope that the second half of the year will be a normal year in India particularly, and that should see us doing strong growth in this quarter.
But sir, we are still living in a pandemic environment, as you rightly mentioned, that the southeastern market right now are witnessing the more effect of pandemic, and there is a epicenter now. And second, the raw material prices continues to remain volatile. So uncertainty is still not over, but you are still, despite the uncertainty, are confident that second half of the year will see a significant improvement in revenue, not only just in revenue but also in margins. That's what I just wanted to say.
What gives us a good confidence is also what has happened last year. So we had the similar situation, or even much worse situation in the first quarter, and then the markets and business has rebounded in the rest of the year. I anticipate a very similar year this year.
Okay. Sir, second question is on your more comment on CSF and Nova performance. So a couple of doubts there. So your CSF and Nova performance still talks about some kind of contract manufacturing revenue of roughly 23 crores for the current quarter. While the EBITDA performance or the gross profit from contract manufacturing is minuscule, or close to just 2.6 crores. So that gives even just margin of close to just only maybe 11%. Just want if you can clarify more what is this contract manufacturing business is, and to whom we are doing this, and how the growth opportunities are there, and what kind of margins one should be looking in this business.
So the contract manufacturing is basically to large global FMCG companies. We provide fragrance by manufacturing on contract basis. This is largely a capacity filling exercise, and it has a low gross margin of about 10%. But it is a large volume, kind of takes care of the operational costs.
Okay, so it's only up to the extent to fill the capacities. As long as you are having idle capacities, you will do that. But otherwise, the moment that retail sales or your own distribution sales start going up, the contract manufacturing revenues will come down, right?
That's right. So if you look at the historical context, the contract manufacturing was something like 14 million euros, and our own business in CFF was something 5 million euros. Now we have reached excess of 16 million euros for our own business, and contract manufacturing still remains around the 15 million euros. So it's expected that this portfolio we will start to utilize more and more for our own customers and reduce the contract manufacturing over the next 5 years.
Sir, another question more on the strategic in nature, and just wanted to understand how do you see that the post-pandemic era has changed the business profile of Teva and for our company, Pilker, in terms of global companies are looking for the China plus one strategy. That is one. Second, the FMCG-led business model has changed a lot. People are looking more of the contract manufacturing and outsourcing, where probably we fit into that business. So, and also the acquisition-led opportunities for our company. So how do you see that that the post-pandemic era has helped as a Pilker, or the business profile of the company has changed? Do you see that over the next 2 to 3 years there is a significant amount of business or growth opportunities are going to flow for our company?
So I think the pandemic era, as you call it, post-pandemic, there are clearly consumer behavior changes. So there is a new type of brands, the e-commerce brands, and some of the niche brands that either very bulk sale volume packs with value for money proposition, or pamper yourself proposition with very good fragrances and very high premium products. So this trend is coming in globally. I think part of it is also in India, where people are willing to spend that extra money on e-commerce or luxury products. So this is the trend. The pandemic has only made, I would say, hastened the trend. So there is nothing which is completely new. We were tracking these trends and behavior and in consumer expectations. And the pandemic, if anything, has only made it faster. which is beneficial for us in terms of the overall growth. We are more and more focused on the regional and local brands, and specifically brands tailored to the niche. So we benefit from this in the long-term growth. In the short term, seen actually even prior to the pandemic, at the time of the GST demonetization, we have already seen some of the smaller clients degrow. So we have not additional effect on that with the pandemic, but yes, the smaller clients which have their products being sold through the normal bazaars in the local trade, they have seen less footfall, less people, and less normal business, so their business has been lower. But that is actually an effect which is already factored in our base for last year or for this year. So I think we will continue to grow, and the pandemic, if anything, has accelerated the growth towards our clients or our potential clients.
And sir, over a medium
especially very good, very important in terms of the European companies that we have taken in Italy. We see that huge amount of traction on the regional brands and Italian local brands and niche high-end products, which is helping us continue to grow even during the pandemic.
And so over a medium term, do you see that the growth for the company will be more driven by the acquisitions? You already have a very healthy balance sheet right now. So there is a potential to leverage your balance sheet, and you are already generating strong cash flows. And the margin goes to 19-20%, other cash flows will improve.
I couldn't hear the last part of the question, but on acquisition, there is a clear strategy to acquire and put strategic bolt-on companies and which can help the group to grow faster. Our objective, any acquisition, is not to grow through the acquisition. Acquisition which itself does not grow or is not growing or not really begin to doing something. But our acquisition strategy, we are looking to add geography or customer base of growing customers, which we expect that in the future will continue to grow at a double-digit CAGR.
So the only way to look at acquisition will be, or only reason to look at acquisition will be mainly to get for the customer acquisition, right?
So customer geography, if there is some technology specific thing, we can look at it. Primarily, it is a strategic objective. It will not be too much tactical unless it fits in the overall strategy. We will not do any acquisition.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next question is from the line of Dixit Mittal from LIC Mutual Fund. Please go ahead.
Yes, sir. So my question is on this disruption in Mahad. You mentioned that the plant will remain closed for the most part of this quarter. So will that have any impact on our maybe full year or this quarterly numbers, or do you have enough inventories to take care of that?
So we have, there will be obviously some effect on the supply because of the closure of the plant. We have enough inventories to manage the current contracts. We may be unable to take some new sales orders in this period for 1 or 2 months, but we will try to compensate this in the remaining 6 or remaining 2 quarters of the year, using also additional capacity from China. So there will be effect of either some loss of revenue or some loss in gross margin, since we will have to buy at a higher cost from a Chinese plant and then sell to the old contracts. So there may be some cost in terms of gross margin erosion or revenue erosion. It depends on how the market activates. as of now, we don't foresee a very large impact on the full year basis. This quarter, obviously, there will be impact, but on a full year basis, we don't see any major impact as we can recover some of the lost volume in the next quarter.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. The next question is from the line of Nikhil Upadhyay from Securities Investment Management. Please go ahead.
Hi. Thanks for the follow-up. Just one question. You mentioned in the earlier statement the amount of loss of sales which we had to bear because of the lockdown in 1Q. So if you can just help me with the number, or if you have not shared, what would be the approximate you think the business loss we would have because of lockdown?
I think 40 crore is ballpark number of loss due to lockdown.
Okay. Thanks a lot, sir.
Nikhil Upadhyay, do you have any follow-up?
No, I'm done. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. The next question is from the line of Vedansh Agarwal from Premium Brokers Limited. Please go ahead.
Hello.
Go ahead, sir. You're audible.
Hello. Yeah. Sir, I just wanted to ask if you can put the number to the revenue impact because of Mahad unit.
I think the revenue impact may not be more than 4-5 crores. What we really need to look at is the gross margin impact, since we will have to import from China and there will be many additional costs. But the overall revenue impact will not be more than 4-5 crores for this quarter in terms of Mahad stoppage. Our annual business is ballpark 100 crores, so 25 crores is the expected revenue from this operation in this quarter. I think 4-5 crores will be the loss. The balance will get compensated to the stock in the other locations. If there are no other surprises in Mahad subsequently, I think we will be quite okay.
Sir, there's a container. So is it impacting our exports? Is it expected to impact our exports in the coming quarters?
In this quarter, there will be some effect, I think, but not significant. I think the overall, we are covered in our BCP with stock locations elsewhere and finished good stocks in various parts of the world. If we are up and running in, say, second week of September and we start the production, I think there may not be too much loss in the overall view. We will be down to almost nil stock in the buffer warehouses, and we will need to build that up with our China additional capacity.
Thank you, sir. That's it from my side.
Thank you. Next question is from the line of Naushad Chaudhary from Systematics Group. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity. Just a clarification on some balance sheet part. If I look at on our balance sheet, we work on around 60 to 70 days of raw material inventory plus around 20 to 25 days of the finished good inventory, which keeps our working capital cycle a little elevated. So I was just wondering if there is an scope for improvement in these two parts, especially on the working cap, on the raw material inventory side. And has there been any change in last 3-4 years in terms of availability of these raw material, especially in the domestic market? Can you touch upon these 2 points?
Yeah, so if you see the availability issue and you go back a little bit in the history, we have brought down the inventory levels, and we have had a couple of quarters where we got hit with the force majeure in the past. I don't see that there is a very big scope of reducing the overall inventory from 60 days downwards on the raw material side. and our objective is to continue to increase the sales on the same inventory. So while the inventory absolute number it is what remains, we will increase our turnover relative to the same absolute number, since we can then replenish faster model. But our holding of current inventory, I think we will manage or we will need to maintain somewhat this level of magnitude of inventory, and then we will continue to increase our sales. We already alluded earlier that export optimization is something which we will do, but it's not a major change in the policy.
Okay. And the primary reason for this elevated raw material inventory is because of the unavailability and seasonality in some of the key raw materials. Is that the reason, or is there something else that business is required to have this?
Yeah, there is a seasonality one part. The other part is in our business model, we are trying to manage the cost and selling price. So there is a gap of between 3 to 4 months of any increase in raw material side or any specific increase. So we like to pass it on to our customers with sufficient time, so we don't end up with unexposed inventory shock for us that we have suffered in the past.
Okay, so we try to balance the gap between the contract price revision versus the inventory purchased.
So we try to sell the next 6 months of sales basically with inventory in hand and few contracts supplies in hand, so that there is no sudden change in the margins or sudden change in the expectations from the client side. We need sufficient time to negotiate any price increases with the clients.
Okay, and in terms of our receivables, there is a slight stretch in last 2-3 years. There's a slight stretch on the receivable side also. So, is there any differences in terms of credit given to the clients in domestic market versus export market? Because in this same period, the export revenue has gone up. I was just wondering, is that the reason which is stretching our receivables?
Export market is 120 days and average collection or average pricing, and in domestic market is around 60 days. So anything between 60 and 120 days is normal, depending on the product.
Okay. So for 120 days, do we enjoy better margin versus domestic? And if we can quantify what percentage of better we get by giving this much of credit?
We don't enjoy a better margin or worse margin, but the credit is in US dollar terms normally. So effectively we get some, in a normal year, some depreciation equivalent. So we have a hedging and we get some amount of hedging cost benefit from in a normal cycle.
All right, sir. Understood. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I now hand the conference over to the management for closing comments.
Thank you. I hope we have been able to answer your questions satisfactorily. Should you need any further clarifications or would like to know more about the company, please feel free to contact our team for CDR India. Thank you once again for taking the time to join us on this call.
Thank you very much. On behalf of SH Kelkar and Company Limited, that concludes this conference. Thank you for joining us. You may now disconnect your lines. Thank you.